Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Before the bird, there was only breath. Before the wing, there was only warmth. And before the first cry pierced the silence, there was ash, soft, silver, and listening. The universe had just finished a long exhale. Stars dimmed to embers, worlds cooled to whispers. In the quiet after brightness, a hush lay upon the firmament like snow that did not fall. And in that hush, a hearth waited, not on earth, not in heaven, but in the place where endings curl into beginnings. There the ash moved, not with wind, with memory, for ash remembers what fire forgets. It keeps the shape of what has burned. It cradles the promise of what may yet be. And somewhere within that cradle, a spark dreamed of its own name. The spark did not know it was a spark. It knew only longing, to gather, to glow, to lift. It listened to the silence and heard stories older than time. Tales of suns that learned to sing, of flames that bent to kindness, of breaths that carried prayers. Each tale became a feather, each feather a thought of flight. The ash began to spin, slow as a lullaby. A contour formed, beak of dawnlight, neck of rising smoke, wings inked with constellation dust. When the shape was almost a bird and almost a star, the cradle brightened from within. Heat rippled through the hush like a remembered song returning to its first note. The spark said, "I am." The ash answered, "I remember." Then the hush broke into flame. She rose carefully, as though standing on the edge of the first morning. Her eyes opened, twin embers reflecting a sky that had not yet chosen a color. Across her back, plumage unfurled. Quills of gold, filaments of rose, tips of blue where night still clung. Where her wings touched the dark, dust became aurora. "Who calls me?" she asked, and her voice moved like light under water. From the ash below came a breath, not a word, but a certainty. "You called yourself." She tilted her head, listening to the pulse inside the quiet. It was not a heartbeat. It was history. She remembered burning as a city's last hope and returning as a child's first lantern. She remembered being a hearth in winter and a star in spring. She remembered every name she had ever worn and the one she had always carried. Phoenix. But memory too has a weight. As she lifted on a thermal of newborn warmth, the cosmos pressed its palm upon her back, gently, as a mother hushing a restless dreamer. "Do not fly too fast," the universe murmured. "There is much to gather." So she slowed. She crossed the ruins of old constellations where heroes once held their breath forever. She brushed the rims of extinguished suns and felt them stir, surprised by their own sleeping glow. She skimmed oceans of dark matter and left ripples of dawn behind her. Everywhere she went, ash lifted. Everywhere she paused, a small fire found its courage. It was not a blaze. It was a remembering. There is a secret that birds of flame learn sooner or later. Rebirth is not a moment. It is a practice. To rise is to listen. To shine is to be gentle with what the dark has kept safe. The phoenix alighted upon a shard of quiet space where starlight pooled like water. Beneath the surface lay images. 1,000 worlds waking, 1,000 fires learning to warm without devouring. In each, she recognized a fragment of her own story: Kagetsuchi's careful embers, Agni's faithful smoke, threads tied to a tapestry she had not known she was weaving. "Am I the beginning or the echo?" she whispered. "Both," answered the ash within her feathers. "And neither. You are the path between." She dipped her beak to the starlit pool. The surface trembled, then settled into the mirror of a new horizon. A world where her name had been forgotten, yet where every hearth waited for a song it could not quite recall. She folded her wings. A soft snow of ash fell from her plumage and drifted toward that distant world, seated with warmth. Where the flakes touched, dreams kindled, not of fire, but of becoming. Children turned their faces toward lamps. Elders cupped coals as though holding time itself. Somewhere, a storyteller cleared their throat and began with the oldest truth they knew. Once there was a bird made of remembering. The phoenix listened and felt lighter. The weight of all her lives rearranged itself into music. She rose again, and the darkness rose with her, no longer an absence but a choir. As she climbed, a feather loosened, the smallest one, the color of first light, and drifted behind, glowing as it fell. By the time it reached the waiting world, it was not a feather anymore. It was a star. The ashes of the first dawn still whispered beneath the wings of eternity. From the silence that followed rebirth, the phoenix unfolded herself, not merely as flame, but as memory. Her feathers shimmered like fragments of time, each one reflecting a world she had once burned through, once blessed, once left behind. When she exhaled, stars awakened. When she blinked, galaxies shivered. For a moment that was longer than ages, she simply was. Neither rising nor falling, neither light nor shadow, but balance, breathing. In that balance she felt it, a call that was older than creation, the echo of what was yet to come. She turned her gaze toward the horizon of forever, where the rivers of space curved into themselves, folding into the heart of tomorrow. And there, within that soft fold of infinity, something waited, not a god, not a creature, but a promise. It pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made of dawn. As she drifted closer, the light changed. It grew tender, almost fragile. She saw the reflection of herself, not the firebird, not the divine flame, but the ember that began all things. A single spark suspended between what was and what would be. The phoenix whispered to it, "Do you remember?" And the spark replied, though no sound was made, "I am what you have yet to become." The flame within her heart trembled, uncertain. Rebirth was her nature, yet this felt different. It was not the cycle of renewal but of evolution. Fire learning to feel, light learning to dream. She spread her wings. One feather brushed the edge of the cosmos, scattering trails of gold and crimson through the endless dark. The light reached unborn stars, whispering of warmth. It reached dying worlds, whispering of peace. And in both it was the same message, that even endings could remember the beginning. Below her, the ashes of forgotten suns rose in slow spirals, forming shapes that resembled souls, echoes of what once was. They moved like dancers in the void, tracing constellations with fingers made of light. She hovered above them, feeling their yearning, to rise, to burn, to live again. Not all flames return, said the wind between stars. Then let them rest, she replied softly. But let them dream still. In her wings the universe began to hum. The sound was deep, ancient, and kind. It was the lullaby of light, the melody of rebirth itself. And from that melody, new worlds began to stir, their skies already carrying the scent of dawn. As she moved on, her reflection remained behind, glowing faintly in the dust of creation, a memory that would one day awaken again. For the phoenix had learned that immortality was not endless fire. It was remembering how to love the light enough to let it go. And suddenly, she understood, fire was not meant to consume, but to connect. It was the thread between being and becoming. It burned so that existence could remember itself, so that everything could one day look inward and whisper, I am. Her wings unfurled once more, this time not to rise, but to shelter. She bent over the ember, shielding it from the winds of unmaking. Her feathers glowed like dawn reborn, crimson, gold, and white. The light of her protection illuminated new worlds, where mortals would one day tell stories of the divine fire that sang and dreamed. From those worlds, prayers would rise, not to ask for favor, but to remember, and the phoenix would listen, forever between birth and return, her flame a quiet promise to all who dared to seek meaning in the dark. For even gods dream, and sometimes the dream is the fire itself. Silence. It came not as an absence of sound, but as a fullness so vast that every whisper of existence bowed before it. The phoenix hovered in that endless calm. Around her, the stars no longer burned. They breathed. Their light pulsed gently, like the memory of laughter long forgotten. She felt herself expanding and dissolving all at once. The flame that had once been her heart no longer belonged to her. It had become everything. There was no above or below, no before or after. Only a soft radiance stretching beyond measure. For the first time since the first dawn, she did not know her name. She tried to recall it, that sacred sound that had carried her across centuries, the word that gods had spoken with reverence, the fire by which worlds had been born. But when she reached for it, she found only warmth, infinite and kind. And she understood. The name had never been hers alone. It was the echo of all who had ever burned. From the stillness, the ember she once sheltered appeared again, glowing faintly within the vast sea of light. It floated toward her, no longer a spark but a mirror. When she looked into it, she saw not herself, but countless lives, stars, creatures, whispers of dreamers, all of them flickering within her, all of them searching for meaning. She wanted to weep, but the fire within her heart had no tears to give. "Do you remember me?" she asked. The mirror answered with silence, and in that silence she heard everything. The rustle of mortal breath, the sigh of dying suns, the heartbeat of newborn galaxies. Each was the same sound, repeated through eternity. It was the sound of life remembering itself. Her wings began to fade, not as loss, but as offering. Every feather turned into a beam of light, scattering across the dark like seeds in an infinite field. Where they touched the void, new stars bloomed, not flames of destruction, but of memory. Each one whispered a single truth into the cosmos. Nothing is ever truly gone. She became the breath that moved between stars, the warmth in a prayer, the flicker of courage in the cold. And though no one could name her anymore, they all knew her presence. Every flame, every sunrise, every heartbeat was her echo. There, within that sacred forgetting, the phoenix transcended what it meant to exist. For even light must lose its name, to remember what it truly is. When the light forgot its name, the sky learned to dream. From the quiet that followed her dissolution, the phoenix's breath spread like wind across the cosmos. Every atom, every glimmer of dust carried the rhythm of her heartbeat. The universe itself began to hum in her absence, a low, eternal tone that trembled through the bones of existence. And slowly, the sky began to remember what it meant to imagine. Nebulae moved like drifting thoughts. Stars bloomed as sudden realizations. Moons circled like memories returning home. It was no longer the silence of space, but the dreaming of a great spirit, a consciousness shaped from warmth and longing. In this vast dream, the phoenix's essence lingered, not as flame, not as form, but as story. Every world told her differently. On one, she was a golden songbird rising from molten seas. On another, she was the first dawn, burning through endless night. And on one tiny blue planet, mortals whispered her name in the dark, though they did not know why. They called her hope. The dream deepened. From the still edges of eternity, colors began to breathe. Red became love, blue became memory, gold became faith. Every hue that shimmered across creation was a fragment of her fire finding new ways to be alive. In that color and light, time rippled, and for a heartbeat, she almost returned. The universe opened its eyes, and in that gaze, she saw herself, reflected in everything that dreamed, wept, and reached. The phoenix had become the dreamer, and the dream, and the fire that bridged them both. A voice, ancient yet soft, echoed through the night. "Why do you rise again?" And though there was no body to speak, the answer filled the stars. Because the dream is never over. The heavens shone brighter. New constellations formed, each one telling a part of her story. Some spoke of beginnings, others of endings, but the truest of them all was shaped like a spiral, a symbol of return, of motion, of life's quiet persistence. Somewhere far beyond the reach of time, a single flame shimmered, not to burn, but to watch. It flickered within every dawn, within every dreamer's heart, within every whisper that dared to believe in tomorrow. And so, the sky continued to dream, endless, gentle, awake. His breath, her song, the silence, her peace. For even in forgetting, the fire remembered to dream. There came a night when even dreams grew quiet. The phoenix had become sky, fire, memory, and thought. Yet now, something within her longed for stillness. The flame that once roared across eternity now trembled like a candle before dawn. Not from weakness, but from completion. She had burned enough. Across the endless dark, the stars she once birthed flickered like her children. Each one carried a whisper of her warmth. Not the brightness of destruction, but the gentleness of remembrance. And as their light shimmered across the fabric of the cosmos, she felt them speaking to her in silence. "We are because you were." Her wings, once vast enough to cradle worlds, were gone now, dissolved into the breath of creation. But her presence lingered in every atom, in every heartbeat, in the hush between thoughts. She was no longer the phoenix. She was what the phoenix had always meant. The promise that nothing beautiful ever truly dies. The last ember glowed within her chest. She looked upon it with love, her first and final creation. "You have burned long enough," she whispered, and the ember replied in light. It pulsed once, twice, and then unfolded into infinity. From it came a sound so soft it could not be heard, only felt. The sound of all beginnings ending and all endings beginning again. Galaxies turned. Winds of starlight carried the remnants of her flame through the void. Where they touched, new stars ignited, not in her name, but because of her silence. She smiled, though she had no lips, no form. It was a smile made of peace. In that moment, the universe took its first calm breath. Time, that ancient river, paused to listen. What it heard was not fire, but music. A single note that hummed in the dark, forever steady, forever kind. The sound of existence remembering the warmth that gave it shape. And then, like dawn surrendering to day, she became silence. Complete, luminous, eternal. No beginning, no end. Only the quiet heartbeat of creation, glowing softly in the dark. The fire had remembered its name, and in doing so it had learned to rest. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.